I hope they stay in, but that they have to make their decision, obviously, based on what they think is best for the UK. And
why do you hope they stay in?
Well, I just think that stability. I'm hoping the European Union works out well, and I hope the European Monetary Union works out well. And I think that it would probably be some downside to the UK. Not that they're in the monetary union, but the more Europe does learn to work together over time. I mean, I think the European Monetary Union's flawed, as I've said in the past, but that doesn't mean, we started out in our own arrangement with the 13 states, and we had a lot of problems to work through. So it's up to the citizens of the UK to figure out what's the best for themselves. My hope is they stay in.
Your hope is they stay in because of stability. What do you think would happen to financial markets if they do vote to pull out?
It won't make any difference to anything Berkshire does. I mean, if I was assured by Cameron that they were going to stay in or leave, it wouldn't change one iota what I'm doing in businesses or in stocks.
Okay. Another question that came in from Eric Dabowski. He says that we didn't talk much about negative real rates across much of the world. Shouldn't we be borrowing and buying? I know we touched on negative rates before.
Yeah, well, negative rates affect everybody's behavior. I mean, I know that I paid more for precision cast parts because interest rates are so low than I would have paid if interest rates were 6 or 8%. I mean, it absolutely has an effect on my behavior. And for people that use a lot of borrowed money, it has a huge effect. So it is a huge stimulus to borrowing. It's terrible on people that are lending. I mean, for somebody that's retired and was always afraid of owning stocks or something and therefore kept their money in banks, I mean, they've gotten killed. So you really had the borrowing class getting enormously subsidized by the lending class for these overriding social reasons. But it's really rearranged the income big time of a lot of the citizens in the United States. And I never would have thought it would continue this long, but I also thought a year ago it would have to continue if the Europeans kept doing what they were doing. Mm-hmm. It's going to be, nobody's seen this movie before, and you can go back and read all the great economists, and nobody talked about a long period of negative interest rates.
Joe, you have a question?
I'm looking at an FT piece, Warren, and I guess you had, in addition to the Clayton Homes that you outlined, that kind of a controversy or whatever you want to call it, there's also some shareholders that are mad that you don't have climate change as one of the key risks to Berkshire Hathaway's insurance business. And people are taking it, depending on what they believe in, they're using it to put forth one or another opinion. I was going to ask it in a different way earlier. If you're very optimistic about the future, I am as well. You know that CO2 is going to continue to rise because of China and India for the next 10, 15, 20 years. If you believe the alarmist case, I don't know how you can be quite so optimistic, because our ability to deal with it is questionable at this point.
Yeah, well, the question is raised, and actually it's a proposition that's put forth on the proxy statement of Berkshire by a shareholder, and I'm sure a very well-intentioned shareholder. I mean, this shareholder is worried about the effect of climate change on our insurance business. And in the annual report, I've gone into quite extensively, but the truth is, it's not a risk to our insurance business. In fact, it may very well be a plus. But that doesn't mean that it's not a problem for society. But we write our insurance policies 1 year at a time, and we adjust to changes in the world. I mean, there are way more automobiles on the road than there were 30 years ago or 50 years ago. Well, somebody could say, well, if all those automobiles are on the road, won't there be more accidents, and won't you have more insurance claims to pay? Well, of course, but we adjust our insurance rates every 6 months. And it is not a threat to our insurance operation.
But Warren, I don't even think your premiums have necessarily been raised at this point. And with all we hear about supposedly that it's front and center, that the effects of this are happening as we speak, week in and week out with every adverse weather event, when would you expect to see Miami real estate start to weaken? When would you expect to see insurance rates start to go up, as they invariably must if all these things really are becoming more frequent? Why is it not happening?
Well, I think it's a, in terms of insurance rates, I think it's probably a long way off. But if I'm wrong, we'll change them. But my friend Bill Gates is
supposedly already here. Supposedly already here
on this subject.
Supposedly already here.
Yeah, and no, pardon me?
A lot of the adverse weather events that we see now are tied to it already. So it's not supposedly it's front and center right now if you believe the true alarmists.
Well, it has not caused a change in insured losses that is any way different than I would expect if there were no talk about it. I mean, it
Right,
may well, in 20 years or 30 years, I don't know. But the one thing I can tell you is it hasn't caused it now. In fact, rates are down, and that's the reason we're not writing catastrophe insurance at Berkshire Hathaway is because the rates have gone down for catastrophe insurance.
Right.
Florida has gone for longer without a hurricane hitting land than any time since in the early 1800s.
Right.
So it just is not an insurance risk.